April unemployment numbers, Santorum's endorsement of Romney. We're going to cover a couple different issues today on Texas Insider TV. Thanks for joining us. We're pleased to be able to visit today with the president and CEO of national online magazine GOP-USA, Bobby Eberle. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jim. It's good to be here.
We're getting close to our Texas primary, but more importantly, have the presidential developments of late. First, though, I want to ask you to just put some context and perspective over the political environment. Earlier in the month, the unemployment numbers came out for the month of April, down a fraction according to the Department of Labor, but there's really more behind the numbers, and I know you've done some analysis. A lot of folks still unhappy, and it's reflecting in the Obama national polls.
Absolutely. I mean, what people don't realize, and what the media and what Obama talks about when these job reports, they all try and gloss over one particular number, and people follow. Is it 9%? Is it 8.7, 8.1? Well, the jobs report showed a slowing of hiring, which is bad enough as it is. I mean, that's kind of dogged Obama through his administration. But what people don't realize is there's so much not being shown in the data. And we did a story today on GOP-USA that talks about the real unemployment figure. Because it's not those that are just looking for work and can't find it. There are those who've been looking and looking and looking and are so frustrated they've stopped looking.
So it's not just the 8.1 or the 8.2%.
No, the real unemployment is much closer to 15, like 14.5%, because there's people out there that are so frustrated that they've given up, and a job hasn't magically appeared for them. They're still out of work. There are people who have lost their jobs, maybe in a professional position, a technical position, and the only thing they can find is a part-time job. That's not enough to pay the bills that they're used to paying or meet the obligations that they have. They are still what's known as underemployed. They're not counted in the statistic, too.
Well, I was going to ask, so how do those people show up? Is there a underemployed category?
Yeah, there's a different category there that factors all of that in, but that's not the one that the Obama administration focuses on. That's not the one the media will even report, and that's the number that's 14.5. That shows the weakness of the economy. That shows how people are struggling, and Obama's going to have to face that as we go forward, and it's a great issue for us to run on.
Okay, you've been a guest on MSNBC, Fox News, Election Night Commentary, the Gordon Liddy radio show, and now we're seeing President Obama start to full tilt get out on the campaign trail. We've got these unemployment numbers. How do you see that playing in the next month or so as things really heat up on the presidential trail?
I think it's going to be big. And now that Romney has wrapped up the nomination, we see Obama breaking out his campaign. Mm-hmm. You know, he's kind of wheeling it out at the same time that Romney has. And, you know, our primary process, that battle was a good one because so many people, so many conservatives, so many Republicans tuned into that. I mean, these debates, you know, a lot of people don't give a lot of weight to debates, but in this primary process, I mean, that's what allowed Santorum to gain ground, along with grassroots politics. That's what kept Newt Gingrich in the race. People started paying attention. What issues are they talking about? And, you know, there's a lot of people out there that believe, hey, you know, all this bickering, this fighting back and forth, it's not good for the party. But I don't believe that when it's in its time. And that is, I mean, that's what the primary process is all about. Who do you pick? Who's going to be our nominee? That person can't just, you know, wake up one day and we say, hey, we support him. They've got to be proven. They've got to have trial by fire. And that's what we got this time around.
And a lot of analysts are now starting to compare it, or at least mention the same thing happening 4 years ago with then-candidate Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. But how about You mentioned Gingrich and Santorum and some others. There's still the Ron Paul factor.
Right.
In particular, there was the Maine caucus or primary the other day where he continues to pick up delegates. Talk a little bit about the Ron Paul dynamic going to the convention, if you would.
Exactly. And this is just like I had mentioned. There's a time and a place for fighting these battles, and that's in the state caucuses and the state primaries. Santorum won some. He deserved to continue his campaign and take that message and be an alternative to Mitt Romney. Same with Newt Gingrich. Mm-hmm. These people were on the ballot because they won elections. Now when they saw the writing on the wall, one by one they dropped They endorsed Romney. He's the nominee. The only person who hasn't done that yet is Ron Paul. And to take it a step further, in places like Nevada, where Romney won 50% of the vote to Ron Paul's 19%, the Nevada delegation came together for their state convention, and the vast majority of the delegates are Ron Paul supporters. I believe it's 22 out of 25, even though Romney won 50%.
So there's no relation to the popular vote primary.
No,
versus
it's the organization that it takes to win a primary. Now, apparently, you have to have organization in place to have your delegates in place. Now, per Nevada rules, they are still bound by those election results for the first ballot to vote for Romney. So even though they're Paul supporters, chances are that there's not going to be a stink as far as the actual vote, because no one else is in contention. First ballot, they're bound to Romney. And if this election had gone longer and there was the chance of a brokered convention, then you could see the real turmoil. But what bothers me is that Romney is our nominee, and yet we still are not having the full GOP electorate rallying behind him. And now is the time to do that. Just like Clinton and Obama battled deeper into the season than we saw now, they came together and moved forward. We need Ron Paul and his folks to do that right now. We need Ron Paul to stand up and say, I support the nominee. I'm a Republican, which if he did that, I think it would go a long way to bringing the party together.
Okay, real briefly, we've got 1 minute left. Again, folks, we're visiting with Bobby Eberle, founder and president of GOP-USA. And if I can, the congressional ballot, according to Rasmussen polls, came out here just the other day with Republican generic 44, Democrat generic 41.
Right.
What do you see the impacts of the congressional races, if anything?
That is one of the most important polls that's out there, and people should really pay attention to that. If they ever hear it on the news, what's the congressional ballot looking like? That's if, hey, in your congressional district, forget who's there, would you vote for the Republican or the Democrat? And it, time and time again, is an indicator of what actually happens in November. And for Republicans to be leading going in, for the economy to be so bad, for jobs to be stagnant, it looks good for Republicans, but we have to capitalize, because Obama's going to play class warfare, racial politics. He's going to throw everything at Romney that he can. We need to be unified, and we need to be one going into that election.
Okay, well, GOP-USA's Bobby Eberle, thanks for joining us. We're going to have him back in the future. Folks, be sure to tune in for future editions of Texas Insider TV. Remember, you're either an insider or you're not. I'm Jim Cardle.